The reading that we just had has got all sorts of imagery that at this stage, and it's chronologically out of context from the reading that we've just had. In the last couple of weeks, we've had Jesus' first healing, the first exorcism, and the healing of people. Then all of a sudden, we come to the Transfiguration because next Thursday is Ash Wednesday, next Sunday is the first Sunday of Lent. So we make this jump from where we were in the first and second chapters of Mark right up to chapter 9. And of course, Mark's gospel is not as long as Matthew and Luke. So that's a significant jump in context. Because the context of this reading today is just before the end of Jesus' ministry, as coming towards the end of Jesus' ministry. And it comes after the reading that in chapter 8, where Jesus foretold of his death and telling the disciples that that's what was going to happen, but that would not be the end. And the disciples didn't understand that. And then we have this story, this event, that speaks to us of Jesus' connection with the ministry of the prophets that have gone before with Elijah and with the leadership of Moses and the law and all the things that have gone before. Jesus, in this scene, meeting with these people and the disciples watching on. All sorts of imagery and allusions, links with Jesus' baptism with the words from the heavenly voice. But these words are ones that in the cloud the disciples hear today. In Tom Wright's commentary on this passage, he was describing something that I hadn't thought about. For us that know about Jesus, the events of Easter and resurrection, we come knowing and come to this reading with that understanding. But for the people who first heard Jesus' words, for the disciples and for the people who first read this story, Tom Wright was saying that in Jewish thought of the time, the resurrection was not something that was unexpected. But the way it was expected to happen would be that at the end of time, the righteous would be resurrected, not to one person ahead of all the others, but to everyone at the end of time. So if Jesus' words about he would be raised was something quite out of the ordinary for what the Jewish thought was thinking at the time, something that the characters in the story weren't expecting, but also the first hearers, as this was shared, were not expecting that either. But like a lot of what Jesus said and explained, sometimes the things were not always easy for us to understand. The full meaning of what was being said could be a bit puzzling to us because our understanding is based on what we believe. As we come to this passage, we come with our own understanding of what the passage means and our own experiences of when we've had some sort of experience where something has been revealed to us in our mind, in our thoughts, in our reading, something that all of a sudden the light bulb has turned on and we've seen something. So this reading, while it's quite a short reading, actually has lots of things in it that are deeper and mysterious for us to understand. Brendan Byrne, in his commentary on this passage, makes the point that the Transfiguration is not just the revelation of Jesus' divine status. It's also a revelation of the profound mystery lying at the heart of the gospel, he says, God's costly involvement in the evil of the world. Good to be reminded that while this is talking about what Jesus is doing for us, the reason why it's happening is because God was willing to become involved in the world. Now, Peter's response of wanting to set up booths, to hold on to that experience, to stay there, reminds us of that often when we have an experience, we want to hold on to that experience. But the other thing is that Peter actually gets it wrong here, because he got it wrong in the reading before when Jesus announced that he would go to the cross and die, and Peter spoke against that. Here again, Peter is not wanting to listen to in depth to what Jesus is saying, but wants to stay there in this experience. He got it wrong again. Disciples often get it wrong. And just a reminder for us that when we get it wrong, when the voice came from the cloud, God didn't chastise Peter for getting it wrong. God just said, listen, this is Jesus, my beloved Son, listen to him. So often when we get it wrong, we allow sometimes our inner voices we listen to those of what they might be saying, or the people around us who might, for all sorts of reasons, want to reinforce that we've made a mistake. But to listen to what God is saying to us in the midst of these situations is important. In the Working Preacher website, there was a commentary on this section that I thought was important about listening to God's Son. Because it was picking up, it wasn't just the disciples that needed to listen. It wasn't just us as individual disciples. It was also about the church. And the Working Preacher commentary said, the church has a responsibility to listen to God's Son. That listening does not result in staying aloof where the air is pure and the view is stunning. The church must listen to the voice of God in our midst, so that we are following in a way that leads to the cross. We are not called to have power over others, but to rise up as dust that has been formed by the breath of God, and to give life to others, especially those who are neglected by the powerful. It was reading those words that took me back to that picture that I've used for the theme slide of Judy walking down the hill and some fog around, and those words from Philippians chapter 2 that describing Jesus being humbled, and in this passage expressed in the words, and when he was living as a man, he humbled himself, was fully obedient to God, even when that caused his death on a cross. We don't know what the next steps in our journey will be. In all sorts of ways, the future is not clear to us, as individuals, as a congregation, in the mission exploration that we've been doing. But as we humbly walk the way that God leads us, as we listen to what Jesus is saying to us, then we can find the next steps and find the words and the leading that we need. Today we need to listen to the voice of God in whatever situation we face and what God is saying to us. And the gospel is all about giving life to others. May we, in all we do, listen. May we work towards bringing God's life and making that possible for others to experience and receive God's life.